Joining us now, NBC News Chief Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles, New York Times Chief White House correspondent, and MSNBC political analyst Peter Baker, and MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin. Ryan, I'm not quite sure I've ever seen anything quite like what happened in the Judiciary Committee today. Am I wrong? Is this normal practice?
It's certainly not normal practice, Katie. I'm not saying it's unprecedented, but it is certainly out of the norm to see an entire panel of a hearing break apart because one side of the aisle decides to walk out en masse in protest. And what you see Democrats doing here is really the only tool they have in their toolbox when it comes to Republican control of both the House and Senate, and that's to try and grind the gears of this process down as slow as possible. And there's enough votes here for Emile Bové to win confirmation ultimately on the Senate floor and to get out of this committee. But what Democrats would like to do is try and put as much out there about this nominee so that perhaps if there is a Republican that's worried or concerned about the nomination, that they would think twice before voting no. I mean, it would be the Republican goal to move this forward as quickly as possible so that nothing else can be brought out about him that could be a problem. And what Democrats would argue here, Katie, is that this is a lifetime appointment. There should be as much vetting of this candidate as possible. We should hear from everyone who has insight into his work at the Department of Justice and in other places before they cast this vote. And that's one of the reasons, among the things they're asking for more than anything, is the opportunity for this whistleblower to come forward and testify about their experience with Bové at the DOJ.
What has the whistleblower said, Lisa?
The whistleblower publicly has said that Bové not only told people that they had to be prepared to potentially say F you to courts if they were given orders that were contrary to what the administration wanted from an immigration agenda perspective, but he has also said, Katie, in ways that are even more troubling, that the entire attitude of the Department of Justice was to prepare for, basically, to prepare for ways of skirting various court orders in ways that he considers to be antithetical to the rule of law. He has not come forward publicly on television or radio. He has spoken to a couple of print publications. There's no indication that Erez Rouveni wants to talk to the Judiciary Committee, but Democrats are very eager to hear from him about his interactions with Emile Bové, which they say reinforce a number of other episodes in his career showing that he is not fit for a lifetime judicial appointment.
In normal circumstances, or have we had any past experience with a nominee for the federal bench who's got a whistleblower out there claiming that he's telling lawyers to ignore court orders? Anybody that's been anything like, in your knowledge, Emile Bové nominated and then pushed through the Senate Judiciary Committee without much of a hearing on it, or at least not an airing of concerns, a fulsome airing of concerns, and then put to a lifetime appointment on the federal bench?
No, and I will tell you that Erez Rouveni is represented by some folks at the Government Accountability Project, who are a nonpartisan organization that has a long history with Judiciary Committee Chairman Charles Grassley. I would think that they are beside themselves right now to see Chuck Grassley describe this as a partisan attack on Emile Bové, because if you read all of the emails that Erez Rouveni submitted to Dick Durbin and his team, you will see that this is not a person who is a lifetime progressive or anything like it. He was a true believer in an immigration enforcement agenda. And in fact, in one of these emails, he says to people from the State Department, Homeland Security, and the Department of Justice, one of the reasons we don't flout court orders, and he was talking specifically about the Abrego Garcia case, is if you flout a court order with respect to this one individual, you are putting your entire immigration agenda at risk. Think twice before doing it. Those are not the musings of some crazy liberal.
It is remarkable what Donald Trump is doing in this second administration, Peter Baker, because in the first one, there were obviously controversial choices for judgeships for the Supreme Court, yes. But Emile Bové is out of step with even those controversial figures. Those people who have gone up through the ranks of conservative legal circles, they're part of the Federalist Society. There might be disagreements among policy and perspective and reading of the Constitution, reading of the law. But correct me if I'm wrong, Emile Bové is of a different sort.
Yeah, he is, obviously. I think what President Trump did in his first term was to some extent outsource a lot of the judicial picks that he made to Senator McConnell, who was then the majority leader and very much cared about the nature of the court. And McConnell wanted conservatives on the court, and he was willing to push them through, and they did push through a remarkable number in that first term. But they weren't all Trump loyalists, per se. And Trump has been disappointed by that. He's been disappointed to find that judges are not bending to his wishes on policy issues and other issues. And he's been particularly upset when Trump appointed judges haven't done that. So I think in this second term, loyalty to him matters more than ideological consistency or, judicial preparation or constitutional scholarship. And it's hard to think of a more, classic example than putting your own criminal defense attorney on a federal appellate court. And so he's going to push through Emil Bove, and he's not going to take no for an answer from Republicans. And it's possible that one or two might vote against him on the floor, but it does appear, as Ryan was saying, that he probably does have the votes.
How credible are these rumors circulating around Washington, Peter, that if there is an open seat on the Supreme Court, Bove would be Donald Trump's nominee?
I think it's a very credible possibility. Absolutely. With Trump, obviously, you want to be careful about making any predictions because anything can happen. But he would certainly be on any list, I think, that MAGA advisors would want Trump to look at. And he obviously has the president's ear and has the president's faith. He would be somebody who would be a different kind of justice than the three that Trump put in the first term. The three that he put in the first term, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett, were not Trump loyalists per se. They weren't people that he knew personally. They were recommended to him by conservative legal scholars, the Federalist Society, and so forth. And at times he's been very unhappy that those three haven't gone along with. They've supported him on a lot of issues, but at times he's been disappointed with them. Emil Bove would be very different. It's not the first time a president would put a personal lawyer or friend on the Supreme Court. LBJ did that with Abe Fortas, his personal attorney back in the day. That's happened with other presidents as well. But this is a very different moment and kind of a very polarized judiciary.
Is there a Supreme Court justice that looks like they might be retiring, Peter?
Nobody knows that for sure. I think a lot of conservatives are looking at Clarence Thomas and wondering whether he might want to step down at some point during Trump's term to give him the opportunity to replace him with a full-throated conservative. Obviously, with the age of these justices, they're younger than a lot of justices have been over the years, but you never know with any of them whether they might at some point or another have to think about retiring. But the one that everybody's watching most, I think, at this point is Clarence Thomas.
All right. Let me play a little bit from one of the Democrats on the Judiciary Committee, Democrat Sheldon Whitehouse, who is the ranking member. He spoke with my colleague, Ana Cabrera, a little bit earlier today. Let's listen.
Bove is a bad guy. Simple as that. In just 6 months, in just 3 things that we know about, he's been involved in 3 really major incidents of prosecutorial misconduct. So God knows what he'll get up to in a lifetime position on the court.
Did you ever imagine that your Republican colleagues would simply move forward on a nomination like this?
No, this is the worst of the worst.
I inadvertently promoted Sheldon Whitehouse. Dick Durbin is the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee. My apologies to Dick Durbin and to Senator Whitehouse. There is that comment there from the Senator Whitehouse. There's also this, Peter, from 900 ex-Justice Department lawyers who are urging the Senate not to confirm Bove as a federal appeals judge. They say they have deep concern about the nomination. And they are trying to convey to these senators that his confirmation would be intolerable. Those are strong words. They're not going to all be, I imagine, Democrats, 900 of them.
Yeah, look, obviously that is a statement. 900 is a large number. We often see, of course, letters of complaint about various nominees, but that's a particularly large number. The question is whether it might have any influence with like 1, 2, 3, 4 senators, Republican senators who may or may not have qualms about this, right? That's not going to affect or influence the vast majority of votes in the Senate. But with a 53-vote majority, the only question is, are there 4 Republican senators who say, no, this is a step too far? And they have done that occasionally, but not very often, right? The president's pick for U.S. Attorney of the District of Columbia, Ed Martin, finally ran into enough Republican opposition that he had to be withdrawn. Martin was seen as a partisan, ideological warrior who had, defended January 6th suspects and so forth, and was seen as going too far for a handful of Republicans. Whether Emil Bove, also seems to go too far for a handful of Republicans, we'll wait and see. But I think that, letters like that may have some influence. But the fact of the matter is that, they have the Republican majority in the Senate has been largely very loyal to President Trump's nominees, even those that they have misgivings about.